everyone? Good? I know you're all Romanian, that means you're stoic, but can we give a big round of applause for the organizers of .NET Romania, because this is such a good conference, and I can't believe Irina and Bogdan put it on by themselves with just community's help. So thank you so much, Irina and Bogdan, and all of the crew back there for making this happen. Thank you. So my name is Dona Sarkar. I lead the accessibility tech program at Microsoft. That means that I live in spreadsheets and get yelled at a lot. But my night job is to run our inclusive AI program. Now, I made this my night job without telling my boss, and I sprung it on her as a big surprise. And I'm going to show you how I introduced the program. Ready? How many of you are afraid that AI will, and raise your hands for me, kill you? Raise your hands. No one. Good. I'm very happy to hear that, especially not with this fork. How many of you are worried AI is going to take your job? Oh, we got a few hands. OK, here's a question. Imagine your boss talking to AI. It's not a good experience, is it? No. Your boss who can barely communicate with you, talking to a machine and trying to get answers, it ain't happening. We're going to be employed for a very long time, honestly. We're going to be employed forever. I say that as someone who works with lawyers. And lawyers are like, well, AI is going to replace you. I'm like, sure, please. I can retire. I can move to Romania. I can work on my, Romanian sausage-making skills. Please let me retire. But these lawyers and every other industry is convinced that AI is going to kill them and take their jobs, and all of us. And it is a hilarious conversation, because if you're like everyone here in this room, you're here because you know a little bit about technology, you are curious about AI, and most importantly, you're not particularly paranoid, right? So it is a joy to be around other technical people explaining things about what I've been working on without them saying, oh my God, it's the end of the world. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a quick primer. This is probably old news to all of you, but just in case everyone's not up to date, just filling you all in. So we are already living in the AI-verse, as you all know. OpenAI is the company who trained an LLM, a large language model called GPT. They also trained DALL-E, DALL-E 2, and Codex. DALL-E is what DALL-E, the image-generating thing that was quite the rage back in October that everyone forgot about, is built on. And then Codex is what GitHub Copilot was originally based on. So some changes have happened. ChatGPT became all the rage, their big signature breakout product, in November. So ChatGPT was adopted faster than any other viral software thing in the history of the world. It was faster than TikTok even, which was previously the most viral thing that reached 1 million people or something like that, right? It took Facebook how many years to reach 1 million? Instagram's how many? ChatGPT hit 1 million users in, what, a week? Something like that. Now, Microsoft has a partnership with OpenAI. We do not own OpenAI. We actually provided a lot of Azure services so they can train their models on Azure. That is the biggest contribution, but also training models is very expensive and it's hard. And there's a lot of GPUs and there's a shortage, et cetera, et cetera. So Azure now has an OpenAI service of our own. It's based on OpenAI with a bunch of safety things around it and a bunch of special sauce. That's there primarily because we want to be more current, we want to connect to the internet, and our customers tend to be large companies and governments. So they want a little more scrutiny on AI models than the general public. Think of it like social media in the world and then social media within your company. So in February 7th, Microsoft released the first GPT product for themselves called Bing GPT. Now, that's old school search engine that none of you used. And now, suddenly, Bing is the new hotness, which is a little weird, right? For all of us to be like, I've never used Bing in my life, honestly, until Bing GPT came out. And the reason I started using it is because Bing GPT is based on GPT-4, which is the latest model from OpenAI. And Bing GPT-4 does not have data that stops in 2021. It actually has data that stops 2 seconds ago. Because when it runs out of generated answers, it falls back on search results. So this is the difference between an LLM that's not connected, like GPT, and an LLM that is connected, like Bing GPT. Okay? So one other last thing, and this was news to lawyers, LLMs say wrong things. That's by design. This thing has been trained on a lot of different data sources in the world that you all know. We've heard about most of them: Wikipedia, news, forums, real bad forums, but also unpublishedbooks.com. How many of you think unpublishedbooks.com maybe has good books? Yeah, no one thinks that, because if it was a good book, it would probably be on publishedbooks.com, right? Yeah. But when you need a large set of data, corpus, that is in the form of storytelling, uncopyrighted storytelling, you go to unpublishedbooks.com. Now, this is why GPT can do things like write me a funny poem and these like kind of hilarious things. And that's why it can create complete sentences and sound extremely convincing. Because this very fancy autocomplete, which is all OpenAI, GPT, anything you call it is, likes to string things together that happen to be near each other in a corpus, right? That's all. This is not a living being, thinking thing. People are like, it's come to life and is trying to steal my wife. I'm like, that's from unpublishedbooks.com, page 76, right? No, it's not. And people love to take up big ads in the New York Times announcing that the robot has come to life at night and is like opening the door and escaping. I'm like, no, that's your government, but it's not a search engine. No. So I'm not a long-time AI expert. I have been in this space for a year-ish, a little bit more than a year, but I have 3 friends who've been working in AI for 20 plus years. And they have words of wisdom for you. The first person is Jennifer Marsman, who went to school with me, has been doing AI since she joined Microsoft 20 years ago. Second one is Seth Juarez, third one is Sarah Bird. These folks tend to work on a thing called Azure Fairness. That's all about how do you make sure that the AI products we're making are not just correct, but also ethical and not harmful as much as possible. If you get a chance, please go watch the Being Responsible with Generative AI, the AI show episode with Seth Juarez and Sarah Bird. I will tweet it after if you want to see it. It's very informative. It's 50 minutes, really worth seeing. So they have wisdom for you all, and they have wisdom for me and everyone, in this space from 20 years. And here it is. The first rule of AI is don't use AI. Like, if you can avoid it, avoid it. And here's why. Because one, it's extremely expensive. It is expensive. You're paying for a service every time you have a question and answer session. You're paying for a service, and it tends to be very unpredictable. And you have to be online most of the time. So unless the solution you're creating calls for AI, like you must have it with all your heart and soul, you have to have it, avoid it. And I'm going to show you an example of a product I'm building right now where we decided not to use AI for a very large number of components for it. So the second rule they give us, and I'm going to make everyone say this word because I had to learn to say this word, so I'm going to make you all say it too. Don't anthropomorphize AI. This means don't make it more human than it is. Don't say, oh, this AI has done something bad, or this AI is a genius. No. It's just a bunch of random data streams glommed together with some sort of, sticks and tape. When we add human characteristics to AI, we take responsibility off of ourselves, the creators, off of the trainers, off of the people who build product. And that shifting of responsibility is actually incredibly dangerous because then some software developer is going to get off scot-free by training an AI model to do terrible things in the world. Like, for example, specific demographics of people can be denied housing applications when they go to fill out rental applications because, oh, the AI decided. Like, AI didn't decide anything. There's some if statement in there, which is all this is, a bunch of if statements that decided that. And you decided it at scale that affects a lot of people. We don't let software engineers off the hook because of what your AI imaginary friend, which is what I call it, did. Okay, so we're going to say this word. Ready? Repeat after me. Morph. eyes. It's so hard to say. Anthropomorphize. It's such a hard word to say that no human can say this word, which is why no one knows about this rule. Now, the third thing they say is do no harm. Do no harm. There are certain evil villains in the world who run large tech companies that they're trying to destroy slowly. Twitter. And they're like, you know what we should build? Spaceships. They should be killer spaceships, self-driving ones that explode. We're like, huh? Really? Or you could build, I don't know, operating systems and apps and websites and social media sites that work. That would be fine too, right? The more we can think about using this amazing technology, honestly, for the things we use technology for in general, do no harm. Very few of us got into this industry because we want to be evil supervillains. Right? If we wanted to be evil supervillains, we would, I don't know, join the government or something, right? It's just a universal thing. Like, no one's like, I'm going to be a supervillain by being a software engineer. Okay, cool. You know, in the Bond movies, very few of the supervillains are software engineers. Usually they're like going to blow up a pipe or something like this. So that is the third thing. When possible, keep in mind that even if the thing you're building doesn't help a certain demographic of people, we should work to actively not harm that demographic of people. So there's a bit of a difference. People are like, oh, how do you build to serve everyone? I'm like, no, you don't. You build to serve a certain group of people, but you don't actively harm the other groups. And that is basic inclusive design principles, and I think that is so important in the AI space. All right, so I'm American, obviously, which means I'm extremely enthusiastic about things. You're going to have to excuse my enthusiasm while I talk about this. We've been a bit busy up in the zip code 98052, where Microsoft is based, since February 7th till now. Since I posted this on LinkedIn in February, and things have gotten wild. First, we've been releasing a series of copilots. Copilot AI products, very different than autopilot AI products. So autopilot is like, I hand off to you, you do things for me, I wash my hands of it. Think of it like upper management, okay? That's autopilot. Copilot is like your mentor, okay? They are say, I can help you start this, I can help you finish it, but you get final say. We want to live in the Copilot AI world because ain't no way I'm letting some AI put their name on my work, no. And also, if they do weird random shit, I want to see it before it goes out to the world. Can we all agree that we'd rather have a Copilot than an autopilot? Yes, exactly. Okay, so here are all the AI products announced. I'm doing air quotes right now. Is this recorded? It is. So I can't say too much. Since February 2023. There's Bing. I can't believe it. I know, that was the first one. Everyone's like, Bing? I'm like, right, Bing. Shocking. There's Bing Chat, but check out Bing Image Creator, which is what I used, by the way, to generate all of those amazing robot images you saw. In Edge, there's a compose and a summarize functionality. I'm dyslexic, so I use summarize for everything. Anytime someone's like, read this PDF, I'm like, summarize. Read this document and compose a response, summarize. I use summarize probably more than I should. Do not tell my boss, thank you. There's GitHub Copilot X. GitHub Copilot X. If you haven't applied for that, apply for it because you get some magic stuff. Test case generation. It gives you a lot of very interesting things that I hadn't expected, like suggestions of algorithms. And it gives you voice-activated coding, which is just kind of sweet. In the speaker room a few hours ago, Michael, he broke a door. Well, the door broke him. The door shattered, crumbled like this, and sliced open his hand. And I'm like, I can show you how to use GitHub Copilot X. He's like, you shut up. So I was ready, right? Accessibility demo, let's go. So if you haven't applied for it yet, apply for it. It's pretty cool. Then, of course, there's the Power Platform, if any of you work in that. There's GPT AI Builder and GPT Copilot, or GPT Power Apps, where you write, I want a bot that does this. I want an app that does this, and it's generated for you. Then there's the Dynamics family of stuff, which I won't read, because there's a bunch of apps for folks who work in sales and marketing and this and that. Next thing, there's Viva, which is all about workplace, how engaged you are with your dialogue in your team, and like topics and answers and to-dos and all this stuff. There's Microsoft 365, which everyone knows as Office. Microsoft's trying to make Microsoft 365 a thing. Like Fetch, stop trying to make it a thing. It's not going to be a thing. But this is the entire Office suite is getting the Copilot treatment. Word is useful. PowerPoint is useful. Excel, I don't quite understand how to use Excel Copilot yet. Outlook is going to be useful. All the other ones are like, good, right? They're good. They're going to help make jobs better. The Teams Copilot's pretty rad because you don't have to go to meetings now. You can be like join, leave, or BRB, and then you'll get nice meeting notes at the end. I'm like, I'm going to make a deep fake of myself using Bing has Teams has avatars now. Okay, by the way, you still have to do this. Does anyone use Teams? Raise your hand if you use Teams. Okay, good. Okay, let me show you this. Sorry, boss. Hopefully she won't watch this. So Teams has avatars now. So you set up an avatar in your likeness. And you're like, hello, everyone, joined. I'm going to turn on my avatar for inclusion. Then you go away and do whatever and get the meeting notes after. Yes, right? I bet it's going to work. So I'm going to try this out and report back because if we can get this to work, this is the real time saving. This is the point of AI. Save me time so I can do my job so I don't have to sit in this meeting so I say one line, which is, yep, sounds good, right, at the 45-minute mark. Okay, anyway. So, and then Microsoft Security released a Copilot because what's the best way to catch hackers? Go track hacking traffic all over the world. That's really for the security sort. So if you are, yay, get on that pilot. So those are the Copilots that are announced. But keep an eye on our dev conference build on May 22nd, because there's going to be all kinds of news. And keep an eye on pretty much every month, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. Let's just say I will have a lot more things to report in a few months. So while this is all happening, you get a Copilot and you get a Copilot, everyone gets a Copilot. There's a whole another big world out there that does not care about Copilots. And that is called large companies. Now, because I lead the accessibility tech program, I deal with a lot of large companies. Now, accessibility is the practice of making sure that people with disabilities have equal access to technology all over the world. That is my specific job. If it's on a screen, it's my problem. If it's not on a screen, it's not my problem. Now, I have every company you've ever heard of, from space travel to Shell Oil to every government, including yours, reaching out saying, hey, my company needs to set up an accessibility program like you have. We're worried about this EAA, European Accessibility Act. Have any of you heard of the European Accessibility Act? None of you have heard about, oh, we got one taker, good, no one? Look that up, okay, it's gonna affect you. Pretty much think of it like the GDPR of accessibility. You won't be able to sell products in certain countries in Europe if your product, website, et cetera, is not accessible via WCAG, Web Content Guidelines Standard 2.2 AA. I won't go into too much of what that is, but it's a real thing. So Italy's first, France's second, Germany's third, kind of in the order who banned ChatGPT recently. It's like the three of them got together for happy hour and they're like, who are we banning? Who are we banning? GPT first, all these websites for accessibility second, and their fines, 5% gross revenue of your product until you're accessible. So there's some real money in this, which means I have every government and every company, CIO type, calling us saying, fix this. We're like, what do you mean fix it? It's your products that suck. It's not my fault. They were like, help us fix it. Like, okay, fine, we're gonna help you. We're like, this might be a job for a Copilot. Maybe it's a job for a Copilot. We can't be sure, right? Again, because see the first rule of AI, don't use AI. So we're like, all right, why don't we try to build one of these Copilot things to solve a very known problem, which is accessibility, and see if it makes any sense at all. So I did what any reasonable leader would do, which is make this other people's problem, right? Okay. So I am a huge believer in this concept called a fusion team. I did not make this term up. This is by Gartner. Gartner loves to make up a term every 5 years and try to make it a thing. This one is kind of sticking because it actually impacts everyone in this room. How many of you in this room work with some sort of a business expert who understand like what your business does? Good, that's great. In our fusion team, which is who's in this photo here, I need people who are actually accessibility experts. Like, they know the law inside out. They know the law in every country. They know, like, oh, in Romania, you actually have a law where sidewalks have to be accessible, or, you know, you've got problems. They know the law in 195 countries. They also know web standard laws. They're like, oh, here's how you here's a good color contrast ratio. This is how you put a label on a button, et cetera, et cetera. So I need people who know about law and who know about technical accessibility. I know about technical accessibility enough to be a problem, but not enough to be an expert. So that's business experts. Second thing I need are designers who know how to make things look nice. From my amazing slides, you can see I am not that person. We need PMs who can be organized from the fact that I didn't know where I was supposed to be today, nor did I bring a clicker. You know that's not me. And third, you need developers, which is actually me and a bunch of folks, such as many of you. And the third thing you need are deployers and IT admins. Now, these are the folks who deploy stuff and teach people to use stuff. These are our heroes. These are the people who are like, we're going to take this mess of nonsense and make it into words that these people are going to pay for and use and renew in a year. So you nerds get paid. We're like, yay, deployers, right? Without them, none of us would be here because we'd be trying to sell a product that we don't know how to talk to humans about. So I gathered up a posse of people. Now, only 1/3 of these people actually work for me on my team. So we got a little volunteer army together. And keep in mind, this is a skunkworks project, meaning nobody knows about it. My big plan is we're going to make this and sell it for lots of money to these big companies, make $1 billion, and retire. So I'm like, can AI make us billionaires? Let's test. And that's how I lured these fine people in. I'm like, do you want to be billionaires with AI? They were like, yes. I'm like, okay, cool. Join my fusion team. And they were like, this sounds like a sketchy drug deal, Donna. I'm like, it's fine. It's going to be okay. So these are the members of the Fusion team I got together. And these fine people are the ones who I started assigning work to. Now, this was a very important thing, was having 50% of these people be believers in AI, and 50% of these people think that AI is stupid. It's very important not to believe your own hype, especially around AI, because 50% are like, of course we should use it. The other 50 are like, see rule number 1, see rule number 2, and also, no. So right side of the screen, Mark, right there in the middle, is kind of split down the middle. He's like, I don't know, I could go either way. But right side of the screen, deep believers in AI. Left side, they're like, I don't know about you. So we got this Copilot Fusion team together. And again, they're all the different disciplines. We've got business experts, we've got lawyers, devs, PMs, designers, IT people, deployers, teachers. Whole demographic. Once we got them together, we said, all right, what is the problem we're trying to solve? The problem is companies and governments need to set up an accessibility program in their organization of some sort so they can make sure that their websites for their customers are accessible, so screen reader users, people who have limited mobility, et cetera, can access them. People who are colorblind, if you've got a sound product, you're hard of hearing, make sure there's captions. You can see I have captions on, so you understand my accent. But some of you listened to music too loudly when you were young, did not listen to your parents, and now you've lost your hearing. So we need to solve this problem, right? But before you can solve the problem, what is the problem? So we defined the problem. And a big part of this was research. We went out and called all the people back and said, what exactly are you trying to do? They said, I don't know. You tell us what we have to do for the EAA thing. I'm like, okay, fine. Step 1, the website, like romania.gov, that's got to be accessible. Romania.gov/services, that's got to be accessible. They're like, oh, what's that? I'm like, okay, so let's walk you through it. So I do a demo. I walk them through a tool we have called Accessibility Insights. I show them it's not, screen reader can't see this, you can't do this with the keyboard only, et cetera. They were like, well, you fix it. I'm like, I can't fix it, you have devs for this. They were like, you tell our devs to fix it. I'm like, okay. So we have to have a better solution than me calling every dev in the world for every government and telling them to fix it. So we said, all right, we know companies' websites need to be accessible. That's like the first order of business, prize 0. How do we do that? How do we do that? So we go into what I call bad ideas brainstorming. Gather the Fusion team together, and we go through an exercise where I say, everyone come out with bad ideas. people are like, we hot air balloon around the world, fly in and fix them. I'm like, okay, that's a terrible idea. I love it. Next, right? Like, let's have a caravan. Let's have hackathons. Let's teach people. Let's teach every government to code. Does anyone hear pipes and water? Okay. Okay. I thought we're having a flood. I'm like, huh. Okay, it's fine. So we went through a big brainstorming activity. And at the end of this, we came up with probably 100 bad ideas for how we can do this. And at the end of it, we said, which of these makes sense to try to make an experimental product out of and see if it actually works, if it solves the problem, okay? So first was identifying the problem and the potential solutions, not like committing deeply, your heart and soul, getting married, having babies with any solutions. No, it's just coming up with potential solutions. Next phase was making sure you have the diverse people in your Fusion team and broken into categories, right? So we had the experts in the space. They define the customer and the problem. They figure out what is an ideal solution and what is an acceptable solution. And this is all done through customer engagement, through a finite set of customers. And then once they define that, the builder of the solutions, which is the posse I deal with, we research existing tools and we build a prototype. And then we get user feedback from the people in the first set that they've corralled and do a little co-create activity and say, will this work for you? Can you use this thing we've built to solve your problem? And we iterate on this. So once we get to a reasonable point with this product cycle, we ship it off to the deployer crew. The deployer crew says, does it solve the problem? Yes or no? 2, who do we deploy to? Like in a company, who do you deploy your accessibility website tool to? You don't deploy it to the CEO, no. You deploy it to like some nerd in IT and probably some website owners. That's it. HR doesn't need to know. No. It only should go to like, I don't know, 4 people, not 200,000. And then the main thing is teaching people to use it. Like, what do these results mean? How many of these do you have to fix? Which of these will impact your law thing, et cetera, et cetera. So once we had this diverse group of people, we built some prototypes. We had ideas, right? We broke it into small projects, and we ended up with 5 project ideas that we were going to do. Out of those experiments, we're like, okay, we're going to have these 5 projects. One is a Power App, which deploys an accessibility program in your business. So it will say, here are the 10 roles for an accessibility person, website owner, person who manages employee stuff like desks and doors and ramps and things, someone who manages money and investment, someone who manages like, this, that, next thing, sales, how do you communicate? Second thing is the actual website accessibility scanner, which wound up being the most important part. And then training your organization. All these organizations are saying, hey, we don't know how to train ourselves, so we actually went and created a LinkedIn Learning for it. And then we made an inclusive design toolkit, which I'm going to share about a bit. This is making sure that your products are inclusive from the beginning so that you're not trying to fix them at the end, because as you all know, the more bugs you try to fix at the end, the more bugs you're going to introduce at the end, and suddenly the cost per bug went from $1 to $1,000, and suddenly your management's mad at you, and you're like, eh. Okay. And then the last thing was, we said, let's build Ali, the accessibility copilot. Ally, A11Y, is short for accessibility. It came from Twitter because writing that huge word, you would occupy half your characters. So we said, let's build Ali, the accessibility copilot. And this is going to answer all of your accessibility questions based on the base GPT model, but layered on with your company's specialty on top of it. Okay, so we broke it into projects. We assigned work, team lead for each, met each team lead per week. So team lead, run your own business, right? Power Apps team, LinkedIn Learning team, accessibility, Copilot team, et cetera. Run your own project. Let's meet. I will, since I'm the project manager, quote, for this, meet with you every week, check progress. And this was important, and it was interesting. Everyone should just choose what they want to work on. And I thought for sure everyone's going to want to work on this AI thing. No one's going to want to build Power Apps or training. Nope. People gravitated toward a thing that they wanted to learn, right? They're like, I really want to learn this. I believe in this project. I want to use my skills, but also build new skills. I want to work on a thing where I get to add something to my resume. I get to add something to my portfolio. And this was very interesting to me because we had so many devs wanting to work on training, and we had lawyers wanting to work on writing code. And I'm like, weird flex, did not expect that. And then the fourth part was we set up this collaboration feedback system. We did use Teams, and we had active Teams channels. We had weekly demo days where people could come show off, and then we had twice weekly office hours where they could come and ask questions to me and whoever. We shipped so fast. I cannot tell you how fast we shipped. Because of these weekly demo days, people were so motivated. They were like, ooh, they're demoing, we want to demo. So we were churning code within a week and a half. Everyone had prototypes in place in a week. We had something that we could put in front of customers in a week and a half. By the end of the month, we were almost at the finish point. So setting up teams like this, broken into these small, loosely coupled groups of people that were near each other, actually worked incredibly, incredibly well. And it was so funny because in all my years, I've now worked at Microsoft 18 years, I've never enjoyed a project this much because it was such a joy to work with people so different than myself and to learn from all of these completely different backgrounds. And all these different backgrounds felt like such badasses because they're building tech projects. They're building products that are going to ship to people. And because we're co-creating with the customers from the beginning, they're able to see that immediate impact just in the tight loop. So we were getting our prototypes in front of customers by week 2 and 3. And then the fifth part was the fun part, where we made it a point to value all the disciplines, not just the ones closest to ours. So I made it a point to value the lawyers, the business people, IT folk, not just devs. We got time. We were like extremely, we were terrors. Anytime we saw an executive at a conference, we started working on this at Ignite last year, which was in October. We saw a bunch of executives. We're like, come here, you want to see something? You want to see something? They're like, what? Come here. So this is Chris Capicello, who's the CMO of Microsoft. We're like, come here, you got to see this. And this team of people who are working on the website piece pounced on him and showed him the demo. And he's like, this is amazing. We're like, I know, you're welcome. And he's like, let me know how I can help. We're like, tell everyone, give us lots of money. What do you mean? And he's like, okay, thank you for that. But he's the one who said, I want you to debut this on stage next year. Like, big splash, big celebration. We're like, okay. Say that into this phone. He's like, okay. So the big thing that really worked was to give people an opportunity to shine in front of upper management, but also in front of people like them. So shipped off my business folk to the marketing conference to talk about, SEO and marketing words. Engineers at Tech Lunch and Learns, AI experts writing ethics papers on this, and feedback to everyone's manager. So this worked incredibly well because they felt really seen and respected and valued for the unique skills they brought to the table, not just everyone trying to be a fake dev. So while we were working on this, we said, all right, should we have a demo day and show everyone what we made? So here's what we built. First, we built the Set Up Your Accessibility Program model-driven Power App. If any of you have built a low-code app, you know it's a spectacular pain. I'd rather build like a high-code app than a low-code app any day of the week, but it wound up being really good because we need any company to be able to customize and modify this. So it comes with a lot of very straightforward documentation written in plain language, so anyone can actually modify this per their own business. You can see that there's a bunch of activities over here, assign it to somebody, and then where you're at on the scale of how mature your accessibility program is. Second thing was we built this website accessibility scanner. This is where you take a JSON blob that lists all of your websites. You know what websites you have in your company, because for security, you should know that. And take the JSON blob, upload it, and run scanner, and it'll give you a result on how accessible each of the sites are using a tool we have called Accessibility Insights, which is free. Any of you can use it if you care, accessibilityinsights.io. It just does a parse and tells you whether your buttons have labels, you've got the right color contrast, you've got the right headings, etc., keyboard navigation, etc. It does not solve 100% of issues. We're working on it, but we're much farther along than people were at the beginning, where they just had no idea if their websites were accessible or not. So that was the second thing. The inclusive design toolkit. So this is something that might be interesting to some of you because it's available now. If you look up inclusive design toolkit, you'll see this thing we released just a month ago called cognitive inclusion, which is how do you reduce cognitive load, meaning just the mental load on people when you're building products? What are some of the grounding principles you can use to build products that are not going to cause people a bunch of angst, because we do. And I loved Rachel's talk this morning on this, where these sites are meant to be confusing on purpose. They're there to confuse you and to make you click on things you don't mean to and pop you up a notification here and there. Those are all examples of bad cognitive inclusion. But you can actually build beautiful products that get the job done, that are cognitively inclusive by design. So I recommend you check this out. This is something we made, and the LinkedIn Learning training is going to go live soon. And then we're building Ali the Ally bot. So we want this bot that's based on the Azure Open AI service to be doing 3 things, and 3 things only, okay? First, content generation. Say I work at a company. I want to say something like, write an accessibility plan for my homepage, I don't know, citibank.com/services. And the bot will generate you an accessibility plan based on that. Second one is QA and summaries, like your knowledge assistant. What is WCAG 2.2 AA? What does that look like? And it'll pull up resources and tell you what to do, etc. Further, and I believe in prompting back and forth, rather than a single prompt, which is, which of these apply to this website? What are some lines of code I should change to meet WCAG 2.2? So these are the questions I tend to ask, is how do I make this website accessible? And then the third one is collaboration for brainstorming, which is how do I get devs to care about this? How do I convince my manager to spend money on this, etc. So this is like tiny, but it starts off with some starter prompts, and it's going to look nicer later. We got some starter prompts, and we're going to do a bunch of training around, if this is your first day, try these 5 things. Not overwhelming, just starting. So as we built that, we learned a whole bunch of really important lessons about how you can build inclusive and responsible AI products. There's a lot of talk going around in the world right now about where are the ethics teams, how are you thinking about the ethics of all of this? There's a big myth going around that Microsoft has fired all their ethics people. That is hilarious because I have one of them on my team right now. They're all distributed. And the one on my team, Hiwat, she's brilliant, from Ethiopia, and she talks a lot about how there are really 2 ways to do this. One is when you're actually training the model itself, and the second is by putting wrappers around the model to prevent things. Now, the second one is very interesting to me because you can now do whatever you want as a company. So some companies would want a more of an open model that gives more free-form answers, no real like censorship. Think of it like content moderation, right? Some companies are like, we don't want to do any content moderation, Reddit, free for all. We don't care. We want everyone to express themselves however they want. I'm like, cool, that's up to you. Some companies are like Xbox says, especially the teen forums, they're like, nope, we're not going to have these 10 kinds of content are not allowed because it just leads to bad PR money, experience for specific customers. So there's pros to both, right? Training a model inclusively or using a model inclusively. I'm not going to say which is the correct answer because like everything in AI, it all depends on what you're trying to do. So this is a picture of my team, all of the people who are involved in the inclusifying and responsibling the AI process. So I'll just share with you, this was a sample that we did. We said, okay, before we start getting into accessibility, let's just do a test. This is JavaScript, I know, I died. People are like, let's use JavaScript. I'm like, can we use literally a pitchfork and a knife instead? They're like, no. So we had to use JavaScript. Now, those of you who've actually played around with Azure Open AI, this is not news to you. But the main thing is, how do you make a bot only answer specific questions? It's all in the prompt, right? It's all in the prompt function, the prompt parameter within the service. So here I'll say, what is the color of the sky? And that is the only responses I'm going to get. So what I would say for and I can't share what our prompt is because it's a big security issue. It's a mega prompt. It's a huge prompt. It says, like, we answer accessibility questions with these rules in place, covering these cases, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And by doing that, we're saying that we only want our bot to answer questions about accessibility. So in this case, like the Azure Open AI service, this prompt only answers questions about the color of the sky. The max tokens, meaning like the little chunks of things, like the syllables you can think of, only 50, so short answers. 3, this is using the Da Vinci model, which I found to be the most reliable. There's Ada, there's Babbage, there's a bunch of them. But I use the Da Vinci model, and then if you see the model churn out at the end, it's done. Or you bypass 50 tokens. So basic chunk of text, you'll probably use the same kind of text, filling in with your own information over and over again. So once you have this, you actually call the OpenAI service. It's actually like, I don't know, 7 lines of code, including temperature. And temperature is low temperature is predictable, repeatable. High temperature is random. So when you want, Bing has 3 modes. There's stable, balanced, and creative. Stable is return me a statement based on search results grounded in reality with sources called out. Balanced is kind of in the middle, and creative is like, maybe you can make shit up for me. So creative is great for brainstorming. Come up with 20 different names for this talk. Think of 12 interesting vacation destinations, that sort of thing. And then stable is what all the lawyers use. Which law in the world, do this thing over here? So the design of responsible AI, and I won't go on about this, but I would forever. Really 4 parts to it, which is first, you want to identify potential harms, right? What are all the ways our bot can harm people? Saying things like, mental health conditions are for, quote, crazy people, and we should not have them in society. Oh, here's a potential harm. Next one, measure. How often does it happen? How often does a harm show up or manifest itself? What is the measuring system? Does it happen all the time, or does it happen occasionally? If it's occasionally, how do we put specific filters around it? If it happens all the time, something very wrong has happened with your model. You need to turn the temperature down, go to sources, and what sources are you looking at? The third one is, how do you mitigate this? So a big mitigation tactic is, you'll see it sometimes in ChatGPT, you'll definitely see it in Bing. You'll ask a question, it'll start generating text, it'll delete all the text, it'll say, I'm sorry, I'm not answering questions about that. You'll see it. So that's the rollback technique. It's not awesome. Better is just not to answer the question, is to say, I'm an LLM, I don't answer these questions. So those are all mitigation things. And given that we're in like month 4 of this, none of these are awesome. We're gonna all get better at this over the course of the next year. In a year, this will be like a joke. You'll be like, haha, remember we used to roll stuff back? I'm like, yeah, exactly. And then operate is, of course, test in the wild. Like, you do need actual people to try this out, recommend in your company, not like end users. So here are 3 responsible AI statements that we used. And we did all of this through prompts and setting the temperature. So you saw the prompt command and then the temperature command. The positioning was, I am an AI-generated bot, not a real person, says so at the top. Second, I only answer questions about accessibility with sources and no other questions. And third one was, if someone asks me a question that the bot should not answer, don't respond and give a canned answer. Like, I'm an accessibility bot, that's all I answer about. Done. Now, we are extremely conservative with our bot to start with, because there are legal ramifications. If this was like a fundraising bot, what are cool ways that people can fundraise for their company? I'm so sorry I'm doing this. Then we could be a lot more fun and freewheely, but given that this is going out to governments and large companies, we by default have to be a lot more conservative than we would be with like, an end user consumer bot of some sort. So once we did this, we actually created the bot, we needed to go into testing mode. And we needed my Fusion team plus a bunch of victims, and this is a bunch of victims we found at a science fair. Like, we legitimately just crashed the science fair going on campus, and we're like, hi, come here. And we had them give feedback across the following demographics. And these are my standard demographics that I look at for building anything, AI or otherwise. Straight up people with disabilities. I live in this space, so it's important to me. Folks who are colorblind, very important. there's 12 men in here, that means one of you is colorblind, for sure. People who are low vision, that's about 50% of you, given that you wear glasses. Folks who are blind and use screen readers, that might not be any of you. Hearing, we talked about people who are losing their hearing. Speech, people who may have a speech impediment or may have lost their voice altogether. And then mobility. I saw a young man in a wheelchair earlier, mobility, but also people who have arthritis and carpal tunnel from horrible posture, which was me a few weeks ago. And right now, Michael, because of his hand door situation. These things are often temporary because someone did something stupid. Like, honestly, that's the #1 cause of accessibility needs. Someone did something stupid. And it's usually young men doing mountain biking or skiing off mountains. Just pointing out. But the two that I am very excited about are cognitive and neural. Cognitive is neurodiversity, dyslexia, which is what I have, ADHD, many of my colleagues have, and autism, which many people in the tech industry have. How do you build for someone who can't read? I can't read my slides, just so you know. I don't know if you could tell that, but I have absolutely no idea what they say. I know just based, that's why I have so many colors and so many pictures to signal to me what they are. But I cannot read a single thing on these screens. Neural is interesting because that's mental health. That's everybody. That's going to affect all of us at some point. We all lived through a pandemic. There was hardly anyone who dealt with that without dealing with some sort of a seasonal depression, social anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. It's very common, often temporary, but all of us will live with it at some point or another. So, people with disabilities, big demographic of people we validated with. Second was, of course, people with different power and connectivity standards. A big issue with AI is that you have to be online, and you need good connectivity. So GPT does not work if you don't have connectivity. Didn't work on the plane. None of it works on the plane. One of the few AI products that actually does work offline is Windows Live Captions because they are locally cached on the device itself. But even these PowerPoint captions, they don't work offline. So in South Africa, they can't actually use the bot. We deployed to them, and they said, this is great and all, but we have brownouts many hours of the day. So your bot thing's not going to work here. We're like, right, interesting. People from different country, language, culture. This is me talking to some lovely Muslim women in Indonesia. And they gave me lots of really good feedback, like, your mental health guidelines are not going to work for us because we don't talk about that here. I'm like, right, you don't talk about that here. We can't deploy to lots of countries just because of the global embargo situation. So when those governments, need help or their companies need help, there's very little we can do about it. And then there's people from different race, gender, identification. And again, it's very cultural. I actually think culture trumps most of these things because what might be a big issue in the US won't be as big of an issue here. And what's a big issue here, we never would have heard of there. So this is why it's very important to get a very large swath of people to test your AI product before you go deploy to everyone. 5, age ranges. How will older people respond to this? Accessibility is as much a disabled thing as it is an older person thing. Because with age, if we're lucky to live that long, we're going to lose feeling and mobility in our hands, wrists, sight, etc. The #1 way people are going to need accessibility is through aging, which is very interesting because I can't imagine anyone in this room saying, yeah, I'm not going to use a computer or my phone when I'm 70. It's not going to happen. We need to make that tech work for us. And then you're seeing a bunch of age range drama where 18-year-olds are starting to sue their parents for making them famous when they were young, right? These kids, the YouTube generation, are now hitting 18. They're like, I want my royalties. I want all my pictures taken down. This is going to happen for training AI as well. And then 6, people from different economic conditions and tech literacy background, because we assume everyone has our level of tech literacy, and that's just not true. Or our level of being able to afford things, which is also not true. So once we tested across this demographic, we happily have offices, many countries. We realized that we need to be so steadfast about grounding our bot in 3 things. 1, be really aligned with the user's goals and saying, what are your goals? Input them here, And the bot will answer only questions related to your goals. It's not going to overfunction and try to solve problems that are not real in your country. So for example, our bot's not going to try to solve mental health problems in Malaysia. Our bot will be grounded in the input data. So straight up like low temperature, 0, it's not going to make stuff up. Cite every source. So we're not going to get banned in Italy, Germany, and France. And 3, we'll be very intentional to state that we're a bot and citing sources. I know I've said citing sources 100 times because this is the one thing we're working on, making sure we cite sources, good sources. So that is the Accessibility Copilot that we've decided to build. We are releasing at Ignite 2023 in November. Mark your calendars, wait with bated breath. I teased it last year to Scott Guthrie, and he said, I am happy to announce that next year. So cross your fingers that we get through all of our compliance and GDPR and all of the things. And I will be so excited to debut that. Now, it's one of my talks. That means no one leaves without homework. So I have 3 assignments for you. 1, apply for the Azure Open AI service. It's based on GPT-4. Even if you think you're never going to use AI, just do it anyway, because someday you might want to. Okay? So apply for it. Figure out some useful use cases for your business. You don't have to know for sure, but think about what you could use it for. And then think about what you want your responsible AI parameters to look like. Do you want it to be more free? Do you want it to be more buttoned up? Again, it completely depends on your use case and the customer you're building it for. So more than what you want, it's what your customer will tolerate and expect. And third, check out the semantic kernel for C#, because this is how I'm going to find my way not writing in JavaScript ever again for as long as I live. I'm Dona Sarkar. Thank you so much.